certification of election, administer statement of elected officer, and the oath of office. We need Laura, you come forward, and then Miss Cynthia Alvarez, if you could step up there. I'm sorry, it's 6-0. I'm sorry. It's 6-0. Yeah, my bad. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead. Okay. I, Cynthia Alvarez, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the Office of School Board Trustee for the Decatur School District of the State of Texas, and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state, so help me God.
In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, this is to certify that at a general election held on the 3rd of May, 2025, Cynthia Alvarez was duly elected trustee, Decatur ISD Board of Education. Congratulations.
Okay. I, Stan Schultz, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the Office of School Board Trustee for the Decatur School District of the State of Texas, and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state, so help me God.
In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, this is to certify that at a general election held on the 3rd of May, 2025, Stan Schultz was duly elected trustee, Decatur ISD Board of Education. Congratulations.
Okay, at this time, we are moving to closed session pursuant to the Texas Government Code 551.074 to consider and discuss possible board officers. We are adjourned at 5:33. We will be back in just a few minutes, hopefully. Good to know. Oh, there you go. Okay, we are back in open session at 5:59 PM. We are moving on to section, or item number 4, the TEC 11.061C and policy BDAA local dictate that the board in the meeting following any election must elect a board president, a board vice president, and a board secretary. At this time, we're going to open it up for nominations are now in order for the office of the president.
Make a motion for Sandy Schneider, Board President.
All right, we've got Sandy Schneider. Anyone else? Any other nominations?
Mr. President, I'd like to recommend Stan Schultz as president of the board.
Stan Schultz has been nominated as well. Are there any other nominations? Last chance. Any other nominations for the office of president? Okay, if there are no further ones, then we will take a vote. On the first nomination is for Sandy Schneider. All those in favor for her to be president, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Nay. That vote was, if I counted it correctly, 2-4. Okay, now for the other oh, I'm sorry, 2-5. We now have full 7. Apologize, Cynthia. Now for the nomination of Stan Schultz as president. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The motion passes 5-2. Stan Schultz will remain as the president of the school board. Now we are opening up nominations for vice president.
Mr. President, I nominate Dr. Matt Joyner as Vice President.
All right. We have a nomination from Delvin for Matt Joyner. Do we have any other nominations for vice president? Last chance. Any other nominations? If not, then I will close the nominations for vice president. All those in favor of Matt Joyner as remaining as vice president, say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Now open up nominations for the office of secretary.
Mr. President, I nominate Sandy Snyder.
Delvin Campbell nominates Sandy Schneider as secretary. Do we have any other nominations? If there are no other nominations, then I will close that and vote on Sandy Schneider. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Sandy Schneider remains as secretary. It's 7-0. We are going to change things up just a bit because we've got a full house here tonight, and the way the agenda is set that we were going to go back into closed session. We are going to postpone that so that we can move along to recognize all of our distinguished members that are here tonight. So the first thing we're going to do is the invocation. So if everyone would please stand. And Matt, would you be so kind to do that? Mr.
Will you pray with me? Father God, we thank you for this day, this beautiful day. We thank you for each of the individuals who are gathered here this evening. We pray that you would bless the students in particular that we are recognizing for their achievements this evening. We are grateful for them and for their parents and for those people who love them and take care of them. And watch over them. We pray that you would be with each of the decisions that we will make here tonight, that they would be in your will for the school district and for the individuals that we serve here at Decatur ISD. And we pray all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And now for the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone turn the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please sit. Let me see. Yeah, probably. So, do you want to go ahead, Monique? So we are now going to recognize all of our distinguished guests tonight.
Okay, as we know, I always come with a list, which is a wonderful thing. But we have a number of students that we want to recognize truly just for phenomenal achievements. We're going to start with FFA. We've got a number of those students here with us. We were here last month recognizing FFA. This is a different group of students, so yay for them. And these are some of the top, they were competing against some of the top students in the state to be able to qualify for state, so we're super happy to celebrate them. We're going to start with Ryan Sessions. Cambry Byford, Grace Young, Gentry Phipps, and advisor Kristen Stockert. And we've got another group of FFA students as well, Jasmine Morales, Ethan Briseno, Julie Brooks, and again, advisor Kristen Stockert. We also have Grant Bain, Kylie Barthold, Reese Carney, Ethan Corbin, Melanie Titter, and she is the advisor. I apologize for that. And last but not least, we have Jonathan Donahue, Caden Forrest, and also advisor Brittany Wheeler. Did she come down? Oh, there she is. Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you. No, I think y'all are okay. We'll just get Stan and Ward. Okay, smile really big. Okay, got it. Oh, sorry, do one more time. Someone was getting their certificate. Okay, got it. And their categories were, for competing were range, home site evaluation, farm business management, as well as welding. So, great job. Okay, give me a second. I got my stacks. Next, we're going to recognize track and field. And we had a wonderful group of students that made it to state, and we're super proud of them. And they run really fast, and they do lots of other good track and field things like pole vault, and so we're just excited for them. We've got Jaden Oates, Jaden Kelly, Hope Escobar, Dilton Thornton, London Gilbreth, Addie Kennedy, Ava Magliola, and Maya Conrad. Maya's certificate doesn't say this, but she actually competed in 3 different events, so that was really impressive. Matthew Cannon, and last but not least, Parker Williams, who competed and won gold on pole vault. And then we also want to recognize the coaches. We've got Coach DeMarcus Jones, Kyle King, Daniel Palmer, Shanda Spain, Dwight Mincher, Tress White, and Joe Merritt. And then last but not least, I did not see if she snuck in, but Reagan Joyner was actually an alternate at the state, which is amazingly impressive. So we're super excited for these students. Okay, just a few more. We also have a very special honor, something that we don't usually get to do. Athletics and extracurriculars are really big, and our students do phenomenally at Decatur, but we also have amazing academics. And at the high school, I think we're all familiar with the valedictorian and the salutatorian and the grades that students need to get to that level of academic competitiveness, truthfully. And so these students have gone above and beyond and really done impressive with their grades. And so I want to celebrate Madison Schwab, our new high school salutatorian. As well as Catherine Mallory, our new valedictorian. And next we're going to have Violet Wilson join us down at the front. She is our district's lead gifted and talented teacher. And she is actually a traveling teacher. She goes to all of our schools, and she really does a phenomenal job making sure that our students, who are some of the brightest students in the district, really have an opportunity to shine in their academics. So we're super proud. These students competed recently in what's called the Noetic Learning Math Contest. And I think when we say math, I probably don't need to say anything else more about that. But these are more than just your usual math problems. These are problems that really challenge students to think creatively and in unique ways to solve problems. And so they did a great job competing against, I forgot to write the number down, but a few thousand students around the nation. And so to be able to compete at that level is really phenomenal. We do have certificates as well as a few ribbons for these students. And so we're going to start by inviting these friends, they're friends as well, these students to the front. Lincoln Massey. Oops, sorry. Seth McKee. Maggie Vanderveer, Blaze Garcia, Rhett Reagan, Laurel Higgison. Liam Boosie. Blaine Dickey. Bryn Bolkin. Mariella Reed. Rhett Kirby. Brian Muniz Florido. Annie Rambo. Kyson Bordeaux. Budrow, my apologies. Solon Brandis. Tice Sparks. Sebastian Alvarenga. Adamari Rueda. Silas Jesco. Lachlan Montgomery. John Wood. And Kai Robinson. All of these students received an honorable mention at the national level for this, so this is pretty impressive. I just handed her a lot of certificates, so we'll give her a second to get those sorted. All right, last but not least, this next batch, you'll see some familiar faces because we just called some of these names, but they'll be back up here. These are actually team winners, and so within their team, they competed at the top level. And these students get a certificate as well as a medal. And so first, we will start with Rhett Reagan, Maggie Vanderbeer, I'm going to repeat Maggie Vanderbeer. I don't know if it was her with the clapping. Okay. Tice Sparks. Annie Rambo. Kyson Budrow. Salon Brandis. Sloan, my apologies. Sebastian Alvarenga. Silas Jesco. Caleb Nahara. And last but not least, John Wood. All right, that concludes my portion.
So, do we want to do all the rest of the stuff and then go to closed? Do we want to go closed now? We can do the superintendent report right now. Do you think we need to go back to closed session? So at this time, we're going to go back to, on our agenda, back to 5 for closed session. So let me read this, because we're going to do C and D, right? Okay, right, C and D. Okay, so 5C, pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.074, personnel to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment duties, discipline or dismissal of a public officer or employee, including superintendent or board member, or to hear a complaint or charge against an officer or employee. We're also going to be also under 5D, pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.076, security devices or security audits to deliberate the deployment or specific occasions for implementation of security, personnel or device, or a security audit, and a review of the SRO contract. So at this time, it's 6:20. We are in closed session. We will be back in the not-too-distant future. While we're waiting for a couple more board members, just want to know, thank y'all for being patient. This is not normal where we have two closed sessions, so this is just because we were electing officers and doing all that, we needed to do that be first in another closed session. So anyway, thank you for your patience and bearing with us. And we will get started momentarily and start with item number 11, the superintendent report. Okay, we're back in session at 7:30 p.m. Number 10, thank you for the reminder. Public forum, there was no one signed up for that, so we're moving on to item number 11, the superintendent report. So I'll turn that over to you, Taylor.
All right, so we already were able to recognize several of ours, the success that's happened within the district, but my first 30 days is officially complete, and so I just want to thank everyone again for the opportunity to be here, and the community support has been huge. STAR testing is done, so that's always a good thing. We also had the volleyball state ring ceremony today, so that was a really neat thing to get to experience and celebrate. We also recognized our ambassador group, which will be the superintendent's advisory committee. And so we were able to surprise them today on campus and let them know that they had been selected by administration, and that next year they'll kind of be the student voice to me and represent the students. So we're excited to get that group going. And then the last thing is we've had over a dozen college intent letters signed, one of which Monique and I kind of got to walk up on today. So lots of really great things happening for sure.
Okay, thank you. Number 12, the consent agenda, which includes minutes, the budget amendments, and purchases over $25,000. We can start with a motion, or you can discuss it if anybody has any questions about any one of those items. They were all in your board book. You were able to look at that prior to the meeting.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented, including the minutes from previous meetings.
Okay, I have a motion from Matt. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second from Nate. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Item number 13, action items. 13A, consider and take possible action regarding the annual renewal of the Education Service Center Region 11 Benefits Cooperative Interlocal for the 2025-2026 year. So, is there any discussion about that? Anybody have any questions regarding renewing that contract?
Wasn't this what we renewed last meeting, but we had a discrepancy on the date or something?
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
Correct. So we've got the date corrected, and so this
Yeah.
should be just formality, but I do want to allow anybody to discuss it if need be. If not, I will entertain a motion on that then.
I recommend the board approve the annual renewal of the Education Service Center Region 11 Benefits Cooperative Interlocal Agreement for the 25-26 school year.
I have a motion from Nate. Do I have a second? I have a second from Sandy. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. 13B, consider and take possible action regarding the hiring of professional personnel for the 2025-2026 school year. You have, in your board book, you have a list of those teachers and personnel that we are looking to hire. Is there any questions or discussion on any of that?
Do they all have certificates?
Those that are teaching, yes, there are some CTE positions that would not be certified.
Mr. President, I recommend that we approve the professional staff of the 25-26 school year as presented and authorize the superintendent to issue and approve contracts to the employees listed.
I have a motion from Matt to approve those. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Chief Campbell. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. 13C, consider and take possible action regarding amending the 2025-2026 school calendar for STEM Academy start and end times. Do you want to explain that a little bit so that everyone knows what we're talking about?
Yes, so it was a concern brought to us a couple of times about the dismissal time with McCarroll being the same as all four elementaries. And so it looks like next year we'll be able to have a couple of different bus routes, one of which will, I believe, have STEM and RAN, I'm looking at Kyle, yes, buses. And so if they could start 10 minutes earlier, that will allow those students to be dropped off, that bus to also make its way to RAN on time, but also allow for the McCarroll parents to drop a little bit earlier at that destination before their own. And so we're looking to open buildings at 7 to also give kind of 30 minutes for parents to make their way across town if need be. And then we'll have conversations about the afternoon as well, those that have middle school parents or students and elementary students. But we do think that this 10-minute alteration will help with traffic, especially on Thompson and Eagle Drive and those areas.
Okay. Any questions? If not, I'm entertaining a motion.
Mr. President, I recommend the board approve amending the start and end times for STEM Elementary for the 25-26 school year.
Second?
I have a motion from Chief Campbell and a second from Matt. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. 13D, consider and take possible action for delegating of hiring authority for contractual personnel to the superintendent from May 13th to September 30th, 2025. We have done this in the past because of the critical nature over the summer of trying to assemble the board. We have historically given that authority to our superintendent so that they can make split decisions that need to be made very quickly. Anything you want to add to that, Ms. Sweens? Okay. All right. Any discussion, any questions on doing that? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I recommend the board extend the hiring authority for the contractual personnel to the superintendent from May 13th through September 30th, 2025.
I have a motion from Chief Campbell. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Jeremy. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. 13E, consider and take possible action regarding the hiring of the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. Anything, questions?
Make a motion to move this, table it to the next board meeting in June.
Have a motion from Jeremy to postpone this. Do I have a second? Without a second, that motion fails. Do I have any other motions?
Mr. President, I move that we authorize the superintendent to employ Lyle Lackey on an employee agreement as the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources.
I have a motion from Matt. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Chief Campbell. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes 6-1. All right, item number 14, information. This is for our budget update for 2025-2026. At long last, Mr. Mazinski, I think you're up.
Welcome back.
And welcome back.
Red button.
Red button.
Got it? So first do it. We would hope that, in general, that, Mr. Alvarez, we would hope that in general that that it's up to me to be able to explain stuff to you without having to do too much preparation outside, because if I can't explain it to you, then I don't have a good understanding of it myself. So there is a lot to school finance, all of you know that, but we're going to start today with some kind of basics as to where we are. This is the structure, and do not worry about when it gets to some specific numbers, they're going to be large, so do not worry about the numbers. Just look at the structure. You have local funds, federal funds, and state funds, and we'll come back to that. The budget that you adopt, this is the budget that you adopt. It's just one page. That is the legal requirement for your adoption of the budget, which is really interesting because there's so much that goes into a budget, and then you adopt that one page. We don't look at the budget that way, and when you have budget issues, I suspect you don't look at it that way either. This has been 40 or 50 years the way that it's expressed in the Texas Education Code. Now, the structure, as I say, it's kind of hard to look at it that way. Salaries represent 70 to 85% of the budget. And if you look at the budget that you're required to adopt, it doesn't say anything about, the word salary is not even in it. Okay, it breaks it down into library, curriculum, administration, and stuff. But yet, 75% of the budget is salaries. We work. What are the teaching salaries? What are the benefits? So we use it for final adoption, but we're going to look at the budget in a little different way. We look at the budget with salaries, and we look at contracted services, and you'll get the same numbers. We're just looking at it the way that we will be working on it for you during this budget process. Supplies, other operating, and that's basic, would fall into other categories, travel and fees for contests, that kind of stuff. And debt service, now you got to remember, you have a debt service fund where you are paying back when the prior bond issues of your prior boards, that is in your debt service fund. However, now and then in Decatur, and we did it when I was here, we took a lease for buses, and so we had debt in the general fund. While it is not uncommon, it does not equate to the large amount of dollars that you have in your debt service fund in most cases. In capital expenditures, which is any item over $5,000, you had none in your original budget this year. You did amend your budget when you purchased buses. Now, when you look at the revenue, in your you have local, state, and federal revenue. We are going to estimate revenue probably in June and July because we don't know really what's going on. Now, we saw Senate Bill 2, the voucher bill, and we saw the House Bill 2, which was $7.7 billion that was going to be added. The vouchers passed. The House Bill 2, the school finance part, passed the House. It's sitting in committee in the Senate right now. We haven't heard much action. You're starting to see some people saying, what's going on? You've got about 3 weeks left in the session. The Senate has some different philosophies internal. Some want to direct funding directly towards teachers. Some want to say, well, just give it to the schools. So I think that is the debate, and we will talk later on in this speech, this presentation, about lack of funding. But I just want to tell you that we really can't do anything. I can plug the basic allotments into the templates and see what happens, but we don't really know what those are. But we will very shortly, hopefully. Okay. In the local revenue, you basically have taxes and delinquent taxes. You have a few other things, sporting goods, those kind of things, okay? You know, your sporting events, but you have your taxes and your delinquent taxes. And then you have two sources of state revenue, which is your foundation program and your available school fund. The foundation program is really the most of your money. By the way, you get your money, revenue from property taxes, and then state. The state gets their money from mostly sales taxes, and then they have motor vehicle taxes and fuel. But most of the state's money comes from sales tax. And so as the economy expands, sales taxes go up, the state revenue increases. It is pretty much at an all-time high right now. Now, I'm going to put those two together because they're the same. You're going to see later on, it doesn't really matter what your current taxes are, what the state gives you. You're gonna find out that it's all it's like a teeter-totter. One goes up, the other goes down, vice versa. You have federal revenue in the general fund, which is really very, very small amount. And when we do these get money, it's a very, very complex formula, hundreds of calculations. It has to do with the how many kids come to school, what days they come to school, whether they're special ed, gifted, or talented. There's lots of things, but all that makes up the educational program. There's many, many other factors, of which, from a board's point of view, you don't really need to worry about because each kid comes into a program that's kind of outside of our parameters, and we also have no control over the TE writes the formulas, and it's up to us to plug the data in and use them. But the one thing I can tell you, what drives, if you know one thing, special ed, gifted and talented, career and technology, they all provide a little extra funding. But forget about all that. What drives revenue is students. Okay, that's it. If you had in Decatur ISD $100 billion worth of oil wells, but you didn't have one student, you wouldn't get any. You wouldn't get any money at all. Okay, it doesn't matter at all. Students generate revenue. That's all there is to it. They're the most, and they ought to. They're the most important asset that we have. Now, I'm not going to. Don't worry about this. I did some calculations on how much money Decatur ISD gets, and don't worry about the small print or anything, but we want to just look at a few things. And what I did, I said, what if 2 students per grade comes? How does that affect our finances? Okay, so this is what I did. When 2 students per grade comes, what happens? The local revenue is not going to change because the local revenue is based on your taxes, right? You got a tax rate times that. It doesn't matter. So that's going to be fixed. What happens is within the program, remember students. So as students come, your state revenue is going to change. State aid increases then. By the way, you'll notice in the general fund, your student, each student brings in about $9,500 to $10,000. That's kind of a good. You can think 10,000. That equals that. That's kind of a good number just to know in the general fund only. Now, this is that same graph that I graphed that data. If you were to add students, how much state aid would you get? In that blue line I just added, the dotted line is kind of the amount of money that would have helped our deficit when we adopted the budget this year. And so you see where those cross is right about 260. Now, if we assume there would never be any more state aid in the future, okay, what we would do, what your game plan would be, is to do everything you can to make it till you get 260. At that point, you'd break even and you'd move. I mean, that would be the goal. I mean, if you open the doors and 200 people came, you'd be almost there. Okay. Remember, students bring revenue. And so that's kind of your break even point. There's a little template that's like the face of the template, and there's 23 other, and I don't know, 23, I made the number up, there may be 50 other workbooks behind that have to do with historical and tax rate and everything to bring your revenue. Now, this is a little tricky. It's pretty simple, but this is where politicians can really get us confused. The amount of money that you get, the top part, remember I talked about all those formulas and stuff, but you know, how many kids you have, their special ed, et cetera. Let's just call that the program. In other words, what does the program cost? All those formulas, let's just say 30 million, okay? Now, what happens is, how do you pay for that? Well, the next thing that happens is they take your tax rate, they multiply it by your tax base, and that brings a certain amount of money, okay? And then if it's not enough to pay for the program, they send it to you, okay? So you have a program about all these formulas, kids and everything. And it's the same for everyone across the state. I mean, the program, you know, you have more kids at Northwest ISD, you're going to get more money because you have more kids. But the formulas are the same. It's that template I showed you. So you have a fixed cost, or you have a program cost. And how much money the state gives, they say, what is your effort? What are you willing to do? What is your tax rate? So you take your tax rate, multiply it by your property value, and that's your local effort. So what can you do? You subtract what you can do from that, and you end up with what state funding is. Another way of saying it, state funding, it's the cost of that educational program less the property value times state. That's the same equation we was talking. I just don't have all the gobbledygook in there. Or the educational program is equal to state aid plus local effort. If you have a program that costs $30 million, which, you know, in the ballpark of our district, and let's say your local effort, your tax rate times your property gives you 20, you get 10 million. You'd have $10 million. We already talked about a lot of variables, so I don't think we need to go into that. But let's look at this example. You have $30 million. Assume you have $3 billion of property value and your tax rate's 70. 3 times 7 is 21 divided by 100. That gives you 21 million. So your program is 30 million. You have $21 million that you're bringing in taxes, so you're short $9 million. So Austin's going to send you those checks during the year, and that's how you're funded. Now, some school districts, the same school district next door might have the exact number of kids, the exact population. They're $30 million for their program, just like ours, but their property value is $8 billion. I mean, they got a nuclear plant, a racetrack, and an airport all together, but not very many kids. And so their tax rate's still 70 cents, but they bring in 56 million, but they only need 30 million. What is the difference? It's called recapture. It's sent to Austin. And that's the difference between a Chapter 41 and 42. Does it make a difference for Decatur? It does, because Decatur has been a Chapter 41 district. We've sent money to the state. As the population has increased, Decatur has went from a Chapter 41 to a Chapter 42. So no matter what, if you have $8 billion and you tax at 70 cents, you don't get to keep that. And that is one of the continued arguments. Austin ISD has always said, what if we could have the recapture money? But trust me, when it comes to your debt service, that doesn't come into play. So like all things in life, it's better to be wealthy than not, okay, unfortunately. So that's how the state tries to be equal. Now, the state can. Here's the formula again. You've got $30 million, and you've got $3 million of $3 billion of property value times the 70% tax rate. This is the same. The equation. The state can shift the burden. So what I want you to realize here is property value generally increases over time, doesn't it? So if the state does nothing, all right, as your property value is increased, what's going to happen to that formula? Your cost of your program is $30 million. It doesn't change. But as your property value increases at 70 cents, you're going to bring in more money. And the states, therefore, the above the 9 million will go down. So your 21,000 as your $3 billion goes up, your 21 million that you get, it will go up, and the states will go down. So if the state ever feels like they don't, and this happened very dramatically, maybe 10 to 15 years ago, they went years where property values started taking off, that formulas didn't catch up, and the state, it got a pretty good windfall, and it was driving taxpayers crazy because their taxes, they really were going up. Now, don't worry about this. As I said, I want to show you two numbers. In 21, this is everybody's, all the money across the state in the foundation program. That other fund, the Available School Fund, the state of Texas has a bunch of oil and gas and stuff, and there's the code tells how much the revenue off that revenue goes to school districts, but they just take the total program, and what the state gives you, and that number is just a plug, so the available foundation, doesn't have to pay as much. But look what happened here in 2021 versus 24, 25. The state put in. They went from 21.5 to 26.5. They put in billions of more dollars, and that's when your legislatures said, well, we put in lots and lots of money. Now, where did that money go? The formulas didn't change. A static district didn't get a dime. But what happened is, as the population of kids grows, they had to fund that so that these districts were growing. If you can look at this equation here and see that what happened is, let's say you had $30 million. The foundation, the program, the cost of the program has not changed. But what the state can do, they can put in money to buy down the tax rate. That's called compression, if you ever hear of compressing the tax rate. So what happens is they push the tax rate down, and so they have more money. So they're giving you 10.5, and so your total revenue is the same, but they're buying the taxpayers. The taxpayers are getting a break on that, but you're not getting a dime more to operate your program. Okay, so that's how a person can say, we put $5 billion more in the state. Please don't say that we're not supporting public schools. Yes, that may be true, but not a dime went to Mrs. Williams here for her program. It's kind of like you got to know both sides of that coin here, because we have to operate on the money we get. We can't worry about the money that might go to some other district. This is just an example. You can go on the internet and see how much the state's paying us. You can see that the numbers aren't important, but they're always running updates based on how many kids they think you have and stuff. All right, this is what's happened since the 18 or 19, the 1920 school year. And back then, the basic allotment went up to $61.60. And you had to give salary increases. The next year, you had salary increases, plus the salary increases from the year before. Not very many people said, well, take me back to where I was, The salaries just go up. And then inflation hit, and then hyperinflation hit. But the basic allotment you see on the left-hand side of 6160 is sitting there for 3 legislative sessions. So even though the state put money and bought down the tax rate and made the taxpayers, good, the children, the ability to run the program has been strained. It's really very near its breaking point. I truly believe this. I want to say, I saw an article on Texas ISD, and the article said, an individual very high in the Texas government said, there's still a couple hundred districts that put money in their fund balance. So don't say that, districts are having problems. So if you take a growing ISD, and 23 let's say a high school, and they get 500 more kids, okay? And that brings them, and from going 23 to 24, they get another they get 550 kids. That brings them 450,000 more. It's just the math, okay? Because remember, kids bring revenue. Now, if you look at that school, that high school, you add 50 kids. You've got a calculus class, you can put 3 in there in English. You don't need to hire, a bunch of teachers. You could usually dilute those kids in the class, but the district just got another $450,000. That's what's going on in your growing districts. Now, I had to take the happy face and turn it upside down because they didn't have a sad face to choose from, so I made one. Let's take a sad district, and they lose kids, and this is happening all over the rural Texas. So you take that school, and they had 500 kids, and then they had 450. Next, they lost 450,000, and so when you look at the districts, same districts, they just have a different population. They have a spread of 900,000, and that is not atypical. That is the dollars. When we look at the size of Decatur ISD, you're at about 30 million, right in that range. That is not atypical, and that's how one district, you say, well, they manage their money better. Trust me, I had a old guy. A friend of mine, he runs if you ever read Texas ISD, Joe Smith, he runs that website, and he said when I was started school finance, he said growth hides a multitude of sins, and that's the thing, because as you're growing, you put a kid into a class, you get extra money, but as you lose kids, you still got a calculus class. You can't say, well, we're not going to have calculus because we lost 3 kids, so you're losing revenue, and that's really where Decatur's at right now. It's a matter of your costs have increased so much without the program aid that you're at the breaking point. You're really trying to run a good program, but you're stressed. Whereas another district might have, they're building neighborhoods faster. In Decatur, will get there, but right now they're not with neighborhoods left and right. And they're just bringing in the revenue through that mechanism. All right, we have different funding problems, and I say these to you as board members as you work with Ms. Williams. We need to watch, market salary factors. If you don't, you can lose talent. If certain positions, whether you like it or not, are harder to fill. 3 or 4 years ago, you couldn't find a technology person. It's getting a little easier, but you couldn't hang on to them. And so they're very, an HVAC guy, if you have your separate own HVAC, those guys are hard to come by. It's hard to have an HVAC guy, who can, knock a good guy who can knock off, a huge salary to come in to work for the salaries that we would pay. You have inflation over inflation, and yes, there's some savings. Gasoline has come down. However, generally, you can take student supplies, insurance and stuff, which is based on valuability. Those have gone up. Schools are getting eaten up with inflation, wage inflation, materials inflation, contractor services inflation. This is very important. It's very likely that as you're checking out at Walmart, the person, your friend, is going to say, and I want to tell you about my kids' school, and they need a librarian, or they need a teacher, and that. And when that does it, your alarm bell should go off and say, you need to talk to Ms. Williams. If you cannot control your personnel, you cannot control your budget. The little stars there are the 2 reasons in the state of Texas that TEA has to send in monitors to fix the districts. There is the odd case of boards that may be throwing things at each other or something, but that's not very common. That's governance, okay? That's not very common. Districts that are having a financial problem, it is the unnecessary adding positions, and then large capital improvements. And when I say large capital improvements, I mean building a high school or something out of the general fund, not having a bond issue and stuff. That will sink a district pretty fast. You can, how your schedules our range, which is number 5. That's really something for Ms. Williams to do, to monitor the schedules. But inefficient schedule can cost you, especially at the high school. Now, kids may love it. It might, okay. And the problem is there may be some schedules that are efficient that might actually lean towards better instruction, but you can't do it at the risk of going broke. You know, I mean, at some point you have to choose. I'm not saying whatsoever Decatur is inefficient. I haven't studied it. Incorrect structuring of debt, and I talked about that. You know, building a building out of that. There's nothing. People lease, purchase air conditioners all the time. I mean, if right now if we had a $7 million broke, we wouldn't have time to have a bond issue. You know, if we had like 4 of these chillers went down, we wouldn't have time. We would have to get the money. We'd have to go to a bank, and we'd have to put it in the general fund and take some debt out. That's just a fact of life. But we're not building another high school through the general fund, so that's incorrect structuring of debt. In ignoring attendance, and I added this one last after Ms. Williams emailed me late at night. She goes, "What about that?" So, what is the cost of a 1% loss of attendance? It's about $240,000. Decatur's attendance is at 95, which is not atypical. What if we had 100% attendance? We'd have about $1.2 million more. That'd pretty much clear up the deficit. And the thing about that is, you need to stop and think about this. Those kids, we're not like a business that if we sell less cars, we can shut the assembly line down and put in less hours. You've got fixed costs of the teachers in all your rooms. And you're paying them whether the kids come or not. So that attendance, and I anticipate Miss Williams to go on an attendance mantra or whatever. I anticipate that she's going to be talking about that, and probably till you get tired of hearing about it. But and you know, we're not. That's where the revenue comes from, and that's just the way that you like it or don't like it. That's part of it in the way that we're structured. That's just a line that shows you attendance is pretty well linear related. Let's talk about our budget process, how we're going to do it. The local tax funds, those are the green ones. Those are the ones that you will levy a tax rate for. The bottom section will be compiled by the administration and the board. Most of the budget process is in the general fund because that's where the money's at. Okay, there's the other, and there may be some money in the debt service fund, but it's a pretty brainless calculation. You know, I mean, what is your debt? How much taxes it take to get it? You don't talk about it. You know, the general fund is what pushes your general fund operations, your test scores. They're the ones that affect the kids daily. That's about 75% of all your funds. Food service will do that in July. That just repeats itself pretty much year after year after year. There's no, what is the cost of meals expected to be? What are your salaries going to be after we know the salaries of the other? Yeah, and your debt service, like I say, that when you look at your tax rate and you put in, it's a simple calculation. Your federal funds we apply for with the Texas Education Agency. We go online and we program how those are going to be done. That's why very seldom will someone come to the board and say, I want to amend a federal fund, because you amend them through the Texas Education Agency. The 2 funds you might want to really look at, we have what's called Title Fund, which is based on your economic status, and then you have 224, 225 is your special ed. A tremendous amount of money does come from the federal government for special education. Federal government, to hear some people think the federal government, would fund the whole school district. It doesn't. However, in the area of special ed, it does provide quite a few funds. State funds, they're just like for textbooks and stuff, and they're so regimented that we don't hardly even talk about them. Okay, on the salaries, the red thing here, Ms. Williams, as she gets the information from the state, we'll break that down. On contracted services, Ms. Williams and I will look at every one of those. We're not to the other groups in our budget. We will allocate. You say, get this much money, please put it in the line item. Just do it. We don't do that with contracted services for two reasons. One is we need to go through them and make sure that we're using these services. It's a lot of money. The next thing is their contracts. We don't want, if let's say you have a $50,000 agreement with somebody that needs to be budgeted, we don't want the person to budget, well, I'll allocate 75 there and then I'll move 25 after during the year. I've seen all those things during my life, and the way you nip that stuff in the bud is you just do it yourself, you get the contracts and then you put it in. So there's contract services. Now the other things we allocate money to, okay? In other words, we have a set amount of money and we give it to the principal, we give it to the director, except before I do that, I pull out function 36, which is extracurricular. And here's the reason why. Because extracurricular has a bunch of weird things like refs and stuff that you may need for playoffs, and they have buses that you may need for playoffs. And you can't and so that when you try to budget properly, we may need to do some amendments. I haven't got to that fund yet, but you can't budget a set amount and then the boys baseball go to state and say, well, we use that on the basketball. We're done with that one, you know. So you need to put a little extra in, but on the other hand, it needs to be Miss Williams' money so that the coaches don't look at it and say, wait a minute, there's $50,000 left. So that's why we keep a handle on that one. We do work, the athletic director, he is allocated funds, just like the principals. Now, again, I'm repeating myself of what we're doing in June and July. We'll do the contracted services. These are allocated to the principals. Now, how are they allocated to the principals? Oh, in your debt service, and you don't have any capital expenditures, and that's up to Ms. Williams may say, well, we would like to do this or whatever. We're not quite there yet. How do we allocate to the campuses? They're given a set amount of funding. Our campuses, and you can see there's a couple $1 million there that are allocated. We'll skip that. We already know that we're doing that. Personnel, I guess I'm talking really to some of our staff. Eventually, you're going to want a system for personnel, but right now there's been so many changes. Ms. Williams is new. She's going to have to allocate. She's going to have to look at staff, rearrange staff, whatever. It's not the time to have a process where people can ask for personnel. They pretty much need to be working with her one-on-one. So this year, you're not going to see a method from my point of how to add staff, that she'll be sailing that ship. And then we do allow, if someone needs a budget, what's called a budget enhancement, we will allow them to ask us for it. In the summer, if we have extra money, we might do it. But right now, it may be tight. We do allow them. There may be a case. There may be a STAR test that comes out that requires every X grader to have a certain kind of calculator, and we don't have them, and we're not going to make the campus do it, so we would do a budget enhancement for those. We also have special projects, which would be one, let's say that we determine that we need another shed or barn or something out at the track. It's a one-time project, and the reason we do that special project is if you put money in the budget to do it, if it's not a special project, when you do next year's budget, it just sits there and like, oh, that's how much money they had last year. And the budget just goes like a Ferris wheel, more and more and more. So we separate those things out. These are just my allocation sheet. I don't think I need to go through this, but I do want to go through this as I started my allocations for this year. I broke them down as to what they did last year per how many kids they have, and we come out with a cost per kid. And the first thing I did when I noticed this, you see that on top there, the different shades. You'll see that McCarroll, Rand, Carson, and Young all had slightly different dollars per kid, dollars per child. So I level those out so that we have a level playing field. we don't set the high schools equal to Rand or anything, but we set the other schools equal. Middle school is actually a little less than Carson. So we even those out, add a few dollars per child to each one of them, and then recalculate how, so that everybody, it's fair and it's on the same page. We do this. We don't use kids for the allocation for the campuses, but we give them what they did last year for maintenance and technology and stuff like that. Because we don't give them the allocation, we do review what they're using it for, because they'll have cost expensive too. In your debt service, like I say, you've just got that one lease. We put that in there. Child nutrition we've talked about. Debt service we've talked about. Federal, state, federal funds will just Meredith is just getting started to put those in for next year. And that's the budget process that we'll be using. I don't know that, you're super interested in how much money we're going to allocate to the high school, that kind of stuff. But I do think that you would welcome the process that's going on here, and we hope to have those done. I do not know. I would think in June that Ms. Williams will have a ballpark figure that we should know more because those House bills or Senate bills, whatever, funds us will. So she should have enough that we can start working on those parts of the budget. So that's where we are. So before I end it, does anyone have any questions? All right. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Alvarez. You okay? All right. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a lot, but I appreciate the education. We can all use that from time to time. Okay, so now we're 14B, financial information. Is there anything that we need to discuss on those? Everybody's got it in their board book, what our financial statement, tax collection, all that payment. Is there anything that anybody had a question about? Okay, if not, then we're going to move to item number 15, adjournment. So at 8:17, we are adjourned.